public meeting, publicly accessible. So anyway, I will call the regular, not the regular, this special Ridgeway Town Council meeting budget retreat for Saturday, October 17th, 2020 to order. And I guess we need a formal roll call, please.
Councilors Cheek is absent. Grambley,
Here.
Lakin,
Here.
Meyer,
Here.
Schuyler,
You're muted.
got it? No.
Yeah, okay, here, sorry.
Yeah. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Here.
Mayor Clark.
Here. All righty. I guess it's interesting seeing the public comment thing on here, but I guess that's just a formal formality. So being no public on the call, I'll pass on that. And guess I'll hand it over to you, Preston, to get started. Morning, Tessa.
Good morning.
Morning, Tessa.
Morning.
Yeah, thank you, John. And yeah, I think I accidentally left the public comment piece on there, but it never hurts to have it, I guess. Just want to start by saying I really appreciate y'all taking the time. I know it's Saturday morning at 9 a.m. and this isn't probably at the top of our list of where we want to be on planet Earth right now. But again, really appreciate y'all taking the time. And I'm going to share my screen here in a minute and kind of start walking through a PowerPoint. The PowerPoint should be following the agenda pretty closely. We'll start by kind of reviewing the agenda. So hang on one sec. Do y'all see a PowerPoint?
Yep.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay, great. So, so this is our first real forum to talk budget. Just a couple days ago at the council meeting, Pam introduced, if you will, the 2021 fiscal year budget. Not a whole lot of discussion. The whole point was to meet state statute. And our thinking was that today would serve as that opportunity to really delve in and ask questions and provide direction, et cetera. You know, the process may look different to some of you than it has in prior years, and I hope that's okay. I'm of the thinking, and I think I've said this to you all before, there's no right way of doing things, but I'm always willing to make changes or hear any input y'all have if what we're doing budget-wise isn't working for you all. So so this is the budget retreat. We'll be here for several hours, obviously, and then you know, depending on the direction and outcomes of this retreat, we can prepare further prepare the budget and more information for the November 11th council meeting. And then there's a budget workshop slated for November 19th, I believe the date is. And then the big one is December, I don't know if I have the date right, but December 9th. That is the date where you all will pass the resolution, will consider and hopefully pass the resolution adopting the 2021 fiscal year budget and then approve the mill levy, et cetera. So, you know, Pam and I have worked really hard, Pam in particular, to get this budget together. So I just want to say thank you to Pam for all the hard work. And her and I met with staff through, I think, the early part of September to help get the budget to this point. Not only the general water and sewer budgets, but the general water and sewer budgets, but the CIP too. Do you hear some feedback, y'all? The CIP too.
Yes.
Do you hear some feedback, y'all?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I think that's,
Yes,
I think
yes.
I figured out. Remember when I mentioned the other day that I had some issues?
Yeah, what was that, John?
You know, there's an add-on.
Yeah, what was that, John?
Did the feedback go away?
Appears to.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think that works.
Okay, I have a little add-on on my system that lets me send my audio from my computer to different speakers around the house. And that's obviously the problem. I started that up to try and send my audio to the kitchen while I got my tea, but I will not do that.
Okay.
Good to know that that's not the issue.
Good
Sorry.
to know.
Sorry
It's
for
very,
the,
very James Bond.
I am a nerd, unapologetic nerd, so there you go.
So thanks, John. I have the agenda here. Just kind of want to go over it, just to make sure we're all on the same page. And if you all have any reservations, please, we can keep this informal. We're here for a while, so just pipe up and let us know what you think. But I'd like to go over kind of what I would consider, or we consider the goals to be of this retreat. I think they're pretty self-explanatory once I get to that slide. Want to give an overview of the budget adoption process, a couple slides on that, or a couple elements to that. And then I think after giving that spiel, and thanks for indulging me, it would be a good opportunity for you all to, ask any pressing questions or let us know what you think should be discussed today. If you don't see it on the agenda or don't think that it's actually going to end up coming up, we definitely want to make sure we hit on that or discuss it. And then Pam will take us through the draft 2021 fiscal year budget, an overview, financial overview. We'll talk about revenue projections. We'll go over operational expenditures, things like that. There's several documents in Dropbox. You'll see, try to order them in what we thought was the best way possible, but we may end up skipping around a little bit. So just bear with us. And then I'll try to be keeping Bo abreast of time and stuff, but we'll have him hop on so we can have an executive session to talk about Chapter 8, Section 4 of the code related to marijuana. Pam broached this subject a couple weeks ago, and I thought it was a great thought or idea to just make you all aware of where we're at with our retail and medical marijuana licenses and revenues and stuff like that. So that shouldn't take too long, but Bo will make himself available for that. And then after that, we'll transition into what I would consider the biggie, just review and direction on the capital improvements plan. There's a spreadsheet in Dropbox that Pam and Jess worked on to try to make a little more, I guess I'll use the word, simplified. But if there's any other information you all want in relation to that spreadsheet, we can certainly procure that for you. But we'll review that document, and that'll be the opportunity for you all to pick and choose what needs to move around. There's a 5-year CIP. They're tied together, but there's a 5-year CIP document and then a 10-year. And I think the bigger piece is trying to figure out what you all as a whole collectively want to see happen in 2021. I imagine that'll be a pretty robust conversation. I really don't know. I'm still relatively new, so I'm not quite sure what to expect here today, but the conversation could go any which way, which I think would be great. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is if that ends up being a long conversation, that's totally fine. That's why I have a lunch break planned right around the noon hour. If you all want to take a lunch break before or after, you all just let us know, and we can be flexible. And then based on what we talked about on Wednesday, I think we'll meet in Hartwell Park under the picnic pavilion, Spirek Pavilion, or figure something out to distance and continue that CIP discussion if we still need to, if we're still on that item, and then transition on to talking about council priorities for 2021. There's a progress report or update document on the 2020 strategic plan in Dropbox. We can go over that in detail so that you all can pinpoint what needs to carry over to 2021 and give ideas on what else you think should be on 2021. The master plan is also an attachment in there. Just those documents, in my eye, the master plan and the strategic plan are married, if you will, and that master plan should 100% help inform the strategic plan, which guides the work of staff over the next fiscal year. So, and that's the agenda. So I'll come on to the next slide, but does that sound okay to everybody?
Sounds good.
Good.
So in terms of the goals, like I said before, these are pretty self-explanatory throughout this conversation today. I don't believe any members of the public have joined, even if there were. I'd love to just keep this pretty informal conversation, if you will. And as we go, please ask questions and we can make sure we try to give you the answers. And I think you all know by now, I'm not afraid to say, I don't know the answer to a question, and we'll make sure that we follow up and get you the information you're looking for. If it's not today, it'll be by the next time we meet to talk budget. But today, you all can give us as staff directions for revisions, ask for additional information, analysis, options on any specific project, program, what have you. And then I've already talked about the capital improvements plan, so direction for capital improvement projects in general, and then of course for council priorities and the development of the 2021 strategic plan, excuse me. So just transitioning to the budget adoption process, this one is kind of just introductory. For some of y'all who haven't been through this before, just bear with me, but I think it'd be good to just, start with a foundational understanding of why we're here and what we're expected to do and what you all are expected to do as the governing body of the town. The town charter, the charter of the town says that the town council must prepare and propose an annual budget by the first regular council meeting in October for the next fiscal year. That we can actually check that box because it was introduced at the October 14th meeting just the other day. There's a series of bullets there. The budget must contain the following information: revenues, expenditures, and balances for each fund and account for the prior fiscal year, the adopted budget for the current fiscal year, estimated actual revenues and expenditures for the current year, and then the budget year. And then prior to adopting the budget, that will be on December 9th, I think is the date. A public hearing must be held, an opportunity for the public to comment. I think there will be plenty of opportunities for the public to comment. This forum is open to the public. If anyone wanted to come in, they would have the opportunity to participate or at least comment. And then same goes for November 11th and then the workshop on November 19th. Those, I guess, wouldn't be formal public hearings, but the public has the opportunity to understand what this process is about and how we're getting from A to B. And then just to round it out, prior to adoption of the budget, council may amend the proposed budget as appropriate. Expenditures shall be balanced by budgeted revenues, which may include fund balances and I don't see what that last word is, and reserves. And then lastly, council shall adopt the budget by a minimum of 4 votes of council by resolution prior to December 15th. And adoption of the budget shall constitute the appropriation of the budgeted expenditures by fund. The second element of this budget adoption process, just want to talk about the remaining timeline. Obviously, we're here in this retreat setting for several hours to talk at length about the budget. And I've already mentioned these dates already, but you have November 11th, which is a formal council meeting. That'll be another opportunity for staff to present the budget and for staff to follow up on any council directions or requests for information. And then for you all to deliberate and discuss any and all aspects of the budget, and then for the public, an opportunity for the public to comment. Budget workshop on November 19th, another opportunity for staff to provide that budget overview for the next fiscal year, follow up on any council directions or requests for information. That November 19th meeting will be, in talking with Pam, I think a good time for you all to review and provide direction on council initiatives, those funding requests that come in from nonprofits each year. I think by then we'll have a full slate of funding requests for you all to consider. And then at that time, we'll have a draft of the 2021 strategic plan prepared and ready for you all to just delve into, look through, and provide direction on for ultimately the adoption in December. And then we come to December, where you all will consider and hopefully adopt the 2021 fiscal year budget, including the capital projects plan and the 2021 strategic plan. And then couple that with the approval of the resolution certifying the mill levy, which is a biggie. And then the last element of this adoption process that I'd just like to touch on, and thanks for indulging me, but I'm still relatively new, so I thought it'd be good for me to convey my approach or my philosophy when it comes to budgeting a little bit, or at least what I hold near and dear. I think it's important to balance core operation expenses with conservative revenue projections, and you'll see Pam and I, we'll talk about it later, but we're in agreement about being a little conservative with certain revenue projections this year. The second one's pretty self-explanatory. We want to ensure long-term fiscal stability. We want to provide for the delivery of quality services. We're in the business of, we're a local government. We're in the business of providing services and meeting the needs of citizens. We want to make sure we have the resources we need to provide those services and to provide them at a high level. So that's what that one's about. And then the last one is establish reserves necessary to meet known and unknown future obligations. So just another bullet around being conservative for that rainy day, if you will. And we certainly had, and we are in a pretty long rainy day with this COVID-19 pandemic. Never seen anything like it. Not sure if we ever will again, if we actually get past it. Maybe we will. I'm not an epidemiologist or virologist or anything like that. I'm not even an economist, but I don't quite know what to expect. But I think Pam and myself have had a number of conversations about how to obviously how to propose this budget. And we talked at length the other day about reserves. So that's this next slide, and then I'll turn it over to Pam and I'll stop talking. But I just want to kind of paint a picture in terms of what we're proposing. And it's not necessarily proposing, but this is kind of what is in there for reserves. We have the 3% emergency reserve required by Tabor, actually called out in the budget. That's 3% of general fund expenditures at 85,000. That's the state required rainy day fund, if you will. And then in the general fund, we have the additional fund balance of just north of $1 million, which I think is fantastic. And might that change? Yes, and that's okay. But I think right now these figures are pretty solid, and would love, as we get through this as we continue through the day, would love to hear y'all's input on what you think about this and a lot of other stuff in the budget. So again, thanks for indulging me. I'll turn it over to Pam, but before I do so, does anybody have any questions? Or are there any items that you all really want to talk about, questions that you're just burning to ask? I think this would be a good time to stop to make sure you all can talk about what you want to talk about.
Any other comments, questions?
No.
No.
Looks good.
Particularly for the newcomers, everything relatively clear and
So far, I'm learning as I go along for sure, but so far everything looks pretty laid out.
Okay. Good.
This Terry, I have one possible capital budget item to discuss later, but it's not worth bringing up at this point. A possibility for a new capital expense,
Okay,
but I could
great.
reserve it till later.
Yeah, I feel like the capital improvements plan always brings up things to me. Always. This is the second time I've done this, but I remember last time that really spurred a lot of discussion.
Yeah, I think it's a legacy of Jen that the capital improvements plan is so well thought out and elaborate and inclusive of all the things that we ever thought of as something that we might want to consider as a capital improvement. So It is, as Beth said, always a big deal, but it's also a really great roadmap for the future, which I think is Ridgeway does a good job of. So, and thanks, Preston, for that overview and review. And sounds like everybody's ready to continue.
Cool. Well, thank you all. And Terry, we'll make sure we hit on your item when we get to the CIP discussion.
Great.
With that, I'll turn it over to Pam. And I'll just keep sharing this, but these next couple slides are just general. You all may have questions about them, but Pam's going to kind of walk you through her presentation. And if you have questions, just ask as we go.
Thanks, Preston. In your packet, you've received a number of documents that correlate with the budget. One is 2 documents that present line items that are in the draft budget. One is line items of expenditures, and the other is for revenues. You've seen this document when we talked about cutting some things or looking at not expending things this year when COVID happened. This is an internal document that we've used in the clerk's treasurer's office for as long as I've been here, but it's really easy for us to follow, and we felt it would be really easy for you to follow. These line items are not necessarily reflecting everything that's in the budget. You wouldn't more than likely go to that line item and see the exact same amount, because there would be everyday expenditures in there or even revenues. But these are larger ticket items, and so it just helps us to know where they were placed within the budget when they get expended, so we know how to track them. So this document is really just helpful for the budget itself. Another thing that I put in there was a little memo on debt service. We paid off a loan this year, and I just wanted to bring that to light when we started looking at the budget. And that was out of the water fund. And in 2021, we will pay off another loan out of the water fund. So I just wanted to show council what we have left in our remaining debt. The water fund has 2 outstanding loans, one paid off in 2030, the other in 2043. The wastewater fund has a loan that'll be paid off in 2028. And then we have in the general fund the ramp project bond, which is paid off in 2029. I did want to bring to your attention that the ramp bond can be prepaid without pre-penalty by 2022, if that's something the council's interested in looking at.
So Pam, I had a question about that. When you said, is it we would have to prepay it before 2022, or is it after 2022 that we can pay it without penalty?
Very good question. I do not know the answer to that. But we could find out the answer to that. We could talk to the bond counsel.
Because my recollection was it was after 2022, then we could start paying it. We could pay it off without penalty.
I think that's correct. That's my.
Yeah. And I remember Jen last year gave us a good summary of what happened with that. And Preston, I don't want to put you on the spot and say, give that to us now, but at some point, letting our new council members know the structure of how that's set up and what it means with the payments varying and the mill levy would probably be useful.
Yeah, specific to the ramp project.
Yeah, that one's sort of complicated.
Are you referring to how the town is paying into it, Beth?
Yeah, I just there's a lot of moving pieces and I can't always keep them straight, so I like the refresher on what's going on with it.
I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I can address one piece right now.
Okay.
And that is that the town council committed, the the bond itself was approved by the voters. And after the voters approved it, the council committed paying from one of the line items in the budget, which is on your first page, on it's number 405GOO. That is the sales tax capital improvement fund. So it was a percentage that had been previously approved by the voters to set aside monies for capital improvements. And the council decided that they would use $100,000 of those funds every year to pay towards the budget, and then the voters would pay the remainder.
Actually, Pam, can I clarify that real quick?
Sure.
Because the wording on the bond, actually, the wording on the bond mill levy itself was actually that town council would pay $50,000 a year or 50% of the capital improvement fund, whichever was greater, towards the debt service. And that was actually a condition of the bond. So over the last few years, council or the town has totally paid the debt service on that bond without there being any mill levy to the public. I think this year there was a little bit, but it was not very significant. So.
Thanks, Eric.
But yeah, we can, so Pam, or not Pam, Beth, to circle around, we'll make sure that we get that information to kind of depict exactly where we're at. Thanks, Eric, for clarifying that.
Yeah, it was, it ended, we ended up doing that, and I think we didn't, I don't know, it ended up not being what we as council had thought we had intended in terms of the paying off the debt service, but it's working out okay. I mean, I think our intent had been is that we would pay a chunk towards the debt service, and the mill levy would also pay a chunk towards the debt service, and with the anticipation that potentially we would pay this thing off really early, but that isn't the way it worked out. So.
Yeah, and just for the newcomers, the newer council members, the history of this is that when the ramp project was being debated, and there was quite a bit of pushback from the business community about the potential impact on their property taxes because of the Gallagher Amendment, which we could talk about separately. But basically, there was a lot of concern that they were going to end up having to pay for the whole thing. And so council, as a session, agreed to this extra stipulation that we would pay a chunk of it out of the capital improvement sales tax. And I believe that sales tax, Pam, is the 0.6% addition that was passed previous for that capital. Is that right?
Yes, and that is both on sales tax and food for home consumption that we break out that line item.
Right. And so that's where Eric's saying that we thought that 50,000 or percent, we didn't foresee, I guess the way I put it, we didn't foresee how successful our sales tax revenues would, how much they would grow in this past 5 or 10 years. And that's why we've ended up having to pay the lion's share of it out of that fund. But it's all good.
Yeah.
It's a funny way, it's a political thing that I don't think we've taken advantage of, making sure that the community knows how little they're paying for the debt service on the ramp project, and that how it's pretty much all coming out of the capital improvements fund.
Which goes back to a discussion we had last year about how many successes this council has, and we don't necessarily let the public know about that.
Right. Well, that's been an issue for years.
Yeah.
So.
Anyway, sorry for the sidebar. It's kind of there's all those pieces, and
That's great. Thank you.
So these documents are just helpful to understand the budget. which is in the same format that those of you who've been on the council have seen. It hasn't changed. What I've done this year, some of these line items for 2021 and even a few for 2020, I put placeholder numbers in there, and so they're yellowed, and so that's why you'll see some of these numbers with in a box that's yellowed. It's really just more for me to remember those are things that I have to address again. That may change as we go through the process. There may be more as we have discussion. So the way that the budget is laid out is there's 3 funds. There's the general fund, the water fund, and the sewer fund. And those operational funds for water and sewer are independent of the general fund. So they stand alone, which was why when we had the discussion about the Habitat for Humanity and they asked for their tap fees to be waived, council wanted to participate in that and use monies from the Affordable Housing Fund. But what we had to do was the town actually, and we just did this recently, paid the water and sewer fund for those tap fees. We couldn't just waive them because those funds stand alone. So you've got 3 different funds shown here. You've got the general fund, the water fund, the sewer fund. Then we've also got a general improvement district, which is in Ridgeway, USA. This improvement district was approved by the property tax owners in that area. I believe it was 94. And the monies that they paid was to pave the street over there. And there was some funds left over, and these funds are still remaining, and they're used for operational and maintenance of those streets. We have talked in the past about their sidewalks and other things. And last year, I think this probably came from Joanne, was to look at doing some culvert and drainage improvements. I do not believe that those are going to happen this year. We'll talk to Joanne to see if it's something that she thinks we should put in for next year. So that is also another standalone item within your budget. And then we break out capital projects that are actual large projects. We create their own little worksheets, is the best way to say it. These aren't capital improvement things like, buying a truck or a loader. Those are actually in the funds themselves, but these are larger projects. Like we've got in here the athletic park pavilion and Space to Create. So these help us to actually track those projects without so that we can see them separate from everything else. And so we create separate line items for those, and we know where we are in the process of those. These are quite often now multi-year projects, and so when you look at them, Space to Create is going to be a perfect example. You're not going to see everything that has happened because this is only showing us 3 years. So that can be a little confusing, and when we get to that point, if we need to, we'll provide to council a better overview of those as they've progressed from year to year. But the budget itself contains, on this particular budget, it's a 2019 actual. Those are audited figures. And the auditors will come before council and present their audit report, but these are the numbers that they gave to us that they found when they did our audit. Just a sidebar, it's really hard for you unless you go back to the actual 2019 budget to see where we ended up with those. But that is the things that the auditors will address when they give their presentation. Then we have the 2020 adopted budget, where it was on 6/30 of this year, and what I'm estimating it's going to end at the end of 2020. So those are the next three columns if we're reading from left to right. And then we have the 2021 adopted budget, but at this point we're talking draft. So the first page of the general fund contains all of the revenues for the general fund. And they're broken down into subcategories of taxes, intergovernmental fees, licenses, permits and fees, fines and forfeitures, our reimbursables, and miscellaneous. And then it brings us down to our total revenues that we're looking at receiving for the year. Most important thing to understand about the budget is at the very top, it shows us our beginning fund balance. So the auditors told us our beginning fund balance through their audit in 2019, we ended the year, the general fund having $1,386,000 $386,891. So that then comes down to our total general fund revenues that we're projecting coming in 2021 for our total available resources. Do you need me to go over anything in the revenues? Do you have questions about it? I think probably one of the things that's for people who are new on the council is the intergovernmental section. Those are line items of things that we receive from the state, and one of those is from the county. That's the road and bridge apportionment. You just discussed that at your last meeting when we approved the MOU. That's the monies we receive from them on an annual basis. The highway user funds comes from state. That is a statewide tax that's distributed to both municipalities and counties. Motor vehicle fees, that's for when someone purchases a motor vehicle and brings it into the town. The cigarette tax is again a state tax on that particular purchase, and it comes back to town. And then we have lottery funds, which are called a conservation trust fund. So of course, those are statewide lottery monies that come back. Then we have our grants that we receive. We receive grants for our different funds. So you'll see the same line item in the water and the sewer fund, but these are all the grants that we had in the general fund for this, that we receive within, I would say we put it into a pot, not to be confused with when we go in to the capital projects funds, there will be grants there. Those grants affect that specific project and help us to see that we're balancing that project.
Pam, I have a quick question.
Sure.
So those funds go into the general fund from the intergovernmental revenue sources. Are they also somewhat earmarked in terms of their use? Or
Yes.
do they just, okay.
They're
So
actually
that's-
paid out of the general fund, and the sheets that I told you about, the one that says line item locations of expenditures, that's where you will find those offsetting items. So when we look at the sheet for revenues, that sheet lists the miscellaneous grants, this particular one for 2021. And all of those grants are expended out of the general fund in offsetting line items on the other sheet for expenditures. Now, most of these grants are being used for specific things, and sometimes they will also include a contribution at the town level. We can go through that list of grants. If you'd like, it might be helpful for you to know.
Actually, the one that was triggered my question was the Conservation Trust Fund, the lottery. Does that require that rather than just going into the general fund to be used for general things, that it's earmarked for a specific use?
No, it does not.
Hmm.
There actually is nothing on here that it is required for. Oh, well, no, that's not true. We just talked about the capital improvement fund that's going towards ramp. But other than that, well, that's a good question, Terry. I'll step backwards and talk about sales tax for a minute. The town has a tax on food for home consumption. That is something that the voters can approve or not within jurisdictions. And those funds were specifically allocated at the time that they were approved by the taxpayers for parks and recreational purposes. So those funds are to be allocated for that. So that would be the sales line item on that first page called, the number is 404 GOO sales tax food for home consumption, which we're proposing to end in 2020 at $90,000. I used to show how those funds came in and how they were expended, but our Parks Department page is so comprehensive now that we don't even need to do that because we're spending way more than we're taking in there. Did that help?
Yeah, great.
Okay.
Thanks for.
So I guess, Terry brings up an interesting point, when we look at some of these intergovernmental funds in terms of highway users and road and bridge. Those come to us from those specific funds, but we don't specifically earmark those towards street, road, and bridge improvements out of the budget.
Targeted expenses, yeah. And there's no requirement necessarily. So they're allowed to go into our general fund to be used as we see fit.
So the other one on the intergovernmental is mineral lease and severance taxes. And you'll note, if you look across that line item, that in 2020, I put in $10,000 because after speaking to someone at DOLA, they weren't sure what was going to happen with those taxes in 2020. And they said, be conservative. So I was, I went 50% less than what we had received in the prior year, but it ended up coming in way higher than what we received in 2019. So usually I would be conservative in that number and not go into 2021 at the same level. But based on what's happening in the state right now, kind of feel good about saying we'll probably come in close to the same.
I'm actually a little surprised to hear you say that because from what I've been hearing and reading, things like a lot of these things, PILT isn't exactly the same thing. It goes to the counties, but there's a lot of thought that those may be getting restricted a lot. But I guess we need to go with what you think the tea leaves are saying.
Yeah.
And is some of that potentially based on Trump's deregulations that are allowing that to grow this year, and could that change next year? So I think, maybe it's wise to be a little conservative. You were conservative anyway, to some extent, but.
Right, that is something we can reduce. I'm on a finance officer's listserv, and we have those kind of discussions. I think that's, what everyone is feeling right now is that that will probably remain the same for at least one more year, but we can reduce it.
Well, I'm fine with going with what you and your colleagues are.
Yeah, that looks good to me.
I had if it's okay, I have a couple questions about sales tax in general. And well, the first one is since the sales tax applying to online sales now has been in effect for a while, I'm still concerned about how that's being allocated. And just looking at, I do a fair amount of purchasing online for my business, and the sales tax that these companies apply from various outlets around the country that I buy from is surprisingly divergent. It's different with all of them. And our sales tax breakdown is so complicated with, tenths of percent here and there, county, city, and state. I'm just concerned that, we may not be getting our fair share of that online sales tax, depending on how it's being both monitored and distributed. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, really good question, John. We entered into a MOU with the state and other jurisdictions about 6 months ago.
Yeah.
About
that's right.
6 months ago, where we now are in a program that allows people in not, I was going to say other states, but everywhere, that are remitting sales tax to know who they need to remit to. And they created a really great website and also remittance. What's the word? I just lost the word. Place for businesses to remit directly to the jurisdictions that they should be remitting to. So we're just starting to use it, but right now we've only been using it a couple months. We're pretty happy with it. They really did a good job with it. The company that's overseeing it is really helpful. So it is being processed through our sales tax remittance program, which is run by MuniRevs. And luckily, MuniRevs is the company that the state hired to do the processing. So they really, they helped write the program. They helped write the legislation. So we feel good about this start. At this point, no one knows if it's really working, or I think that it's going to take at least a year for us to see that. But there was a lot of effort put into it, a couple years worth of effort put into writing all this legislation and getting everything set up.
And just to add to that, the state worked really hard on that system. It's called the SUT system, the Sales and Use Tax Software System, and it was all in an effort to make it a little more uniform and efficient and user-friendly for all the jurisdictions participating, and kind of a catch-all, if you will. So, Pam gave a great summary, but I think it's working pretty well. I was reading an article, I don't know, it was a while back, about how well it's working. Is it catching, to your question, John, is it catching every bit of sales tax revenue, online sales tax revenue? Maybe not, but I think we've come a long way. And that SUT system that the state developed, and I think the company they hired was MuniRevs, right?
Yeah.
MuniRevs is great. They're one of the leading sales tax software companies in Colorado, at least. And I think it's going really well.
That's good to hear. I just noticed on my purchases that sometimes it's 5%, sometimes it's almost 10, which is, and I also, as somebody who used to report sales tax on my my glass business, my stained glass business, it's weird that, you know, it's really like me delivering a project to Telluride. If the client never came to my shop in Ridgeway, I could just charge him. Supposedly I could just charge him state tax, but even that still isn't clear to me. And so if buying an online purchase out of state, should they be paying state, county, and town sales tax? Probably, right? And how do we make sure everybody knows about that? It sounds like the program that MuniRevs has helped the state create is a good start, and hopefully it'll eventually get up to speed with everybody. The other thing I was going to bring up is just for everyone, kind of FYI, is like that cigarette tax line item. I think Pam said that's a state tax, but that's a place where we could actually institute our own additional cigarette tax. And we've discussed this, if you remember, both as a potential to de-incentivize smoking, and especially with youth, but also as an additional revenue source. And another thought just to keep in the back of your minds is that a lot of municipalities that allow recreational marijuana dispensaries have additional direct taxes on those purchases as well. And that's something we can consider in the future. Just
So the tax on cigarettes, though, John, I can't remember the proposition number. That one proposition passes would forego our ability to do that.
That's exactly right, Eric. That was going to be my comment. It's Prop EE. If that passes, the town and all other municipalities in Colorado would be precluded from passing a local cigarette and tobacco type tax. And that's my understanding. And I don't know how it would affect the municipalities that have already enacted a tax. I imagine they'll be grandfathered in, but I really don't know. But that's a good point, Eric.
Yeah, I think they'd have to be grandfathered in, sort of like Telluride real estate transfer tax was grandfathered when Taylor passed. Well, that's good to know. I know CML's sheet on their positions on the various ballot questions, and was curious about that, but that makes sense. Thanks.
But both, to do a cigarette tax or something on the marijuana, that would require voter approval, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So while we're talking sales tax, do you want to talk about that? What we're doing, our proposal?
Oh yeah, we can jump.
Okay, so while we're talking about sales tax, Preston and I have, you've probably noticed, we are projecting in 2021 a reduction from estimated year end for 2020. And we did this based on a conservative approach to the possibility of what the economy might do based on COVID. We also did this based on conversations that are happening within other municipalities and how they're looking at budgeting, and some recommendations from CML.
So yeah, just to add to that. Oh, go ahead, Eric.
I was just saying, that kind of conservative approach has always served us well, and I think it makes a lot of sense.
Well, I'm glad you think so. Even before we looked at what other communities were doing, before we actually did the research, Pam and I pretty quickly honed in on proposing a 10% decrease from the originally adopted 2020 budget. So 10% decrease in sales tax revenue. We're just talking sales tax revenue. And I don't know if you'll have the Zoom screen up, but I'm sharing a slide that I prepared on this specific revenue projection and the trends we're seeing. Pam already talked to some. I think there's another municipality that is it Lyons? Mm-hmm. What are they projecting?
10%. They're
10%.
Yeah, 10%. On all their revenues, actually.
Oh, on all of it. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So 10% would amount to $121,500 under the estimated year-end 2020 budget, and then $111,500 under the original 2020 adopted budget. Sorry. And, already talked about COVID, but one of the main impetus for us kind of honing in on that 10%, and I imagine everybody else too, that's proposing a pretty steep revenue decline related to sales tax, has COVID at top of mind. And the fact that no one really knows what to expect in the coming months and in the coming years. So you got businesses still trying to figure out what the heck's going on, and how to assess the damage, if you will, caused by business closures, and the fact that consumers aren't necessarily, or shouldn't say all, but a lot of consumers not really, on the same activity level as they would in a normal year. And then there's always, there's this sense kind of at all times that there's going to be this COVID-19 resurgence, which, right now in a lot of states we're starting to see, and which may come with, potential business closures, more stay-at-home orders, just to keep the public safe. And that poses a huge risk to the economic outlook. And I'm not an economist by any means, but I'll say it's not cool not really knowing what's going to happen. So it's just we're all in a weird spot. Each June, I think it is, the Colorado Legislative Council presents an economic and revenue forecast. They present that to the state in advance of the next fiscal year. They observe a July 1 to June 30 fiscal year. So yeah, it was in early to mid-June when they presented the most recent forecast. The Colorado General Fund is projected to decrease by 11.6% we're now in their current fiscal year, but in fiscal year 2020, 2021. And then they're projecting an 8.8% growth for the subsequent fiscal year, which will start July 1st of 2021. So that 2021, 2022 fiscal year. Again, they're on a different fiscal year than we are. We're on the calendar year. So I think that 11.6% decrease is pretty telling. So I just wanted to share that.
Well, and that explains, I was trying to figure out why, I was just curious why the proposed 2021 budget sales tax line item for us is $1,350,000, but that's your 10% reduction.
Yes, sir, exactly.
$3,500 was coming from. That's just an exact 10% subtraction from 1,115,000.
Yeah, exactly. That, we just plugged that number based on doing the math with the 10%. And if you all wanted to provide direction to be a little more conservative, or change that number in any way, we can certainly entertain that discussion and go. The next slide is pretty simple little graph here. Again, this is just sales tax, the standard sales tax, the blue bar representing the original budget, and then the orange bar, at least mine looks orange. I don't know what it looks like to you all.
Those colors for specific, is that what you did?
Say again?
Did you choose Broncos colors specifically?
No, and I'm not even a Broncos fan. I didn't even notice that. It's just default.
I wouldn't have had a clue if you didn't tell me.
Said that, John, I wouldn't even.
It was such a comfortable color. I didn't even recognize that yet.
Yeah, that's great. The orange bar represents the actual figures coming in. So I probably should have gone before 2015, but stopped at 2015, and you'll see a pretty steady increase. And then you get to 2020, and it's pretty interesting, pretty spot on, a little bit above where was originally projected for 2020, which I don't want to use the word ominous. That's probably not appropriate, but a little concerning about what might happen ahead. But again, we don't know. But the budgets look good over the last.
It's not coincidental that it looks like the Twin Towers.
Yeah.
But that 2020 figure is projected based on revenues to date, correct?
Yes, sir.
Well, and I think the most important thing about this graph is it just shows how great our staff has done at being conservative and how that's benefited us. And it just is that the lesson to me is that we need to continue being conservative and maybe even be a little more conservative. I could see rounding that projected number for the 2021 budget down to just a flat 1 million, but $3,500 is a small percentage of that.
Yeah, that doesn't make a lot of, not a big bunch of change there.
And Eric, to address your question about the projections, on every line item in the budget, I go through every single receipt or expenditure within each line item to get as close as possible to these numbers. So yeah, and sales tax is a moving target for sure.
Yeah.
It's a hard one because I have to really think about, well, what's happening in town right now and what's going to happen in the next few months. But I feel good with that number.
There's still a ton of people in town right now.
Oh my goodness. I drove up to Uray the other day and it looks like the middle of summer still.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, are we done with sales tax? Because I have a question about property tax.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Go ahead.
If amendment B passes, will that give us any significant change in our property tax revenues for 2021?
I don't believe so.
It
How
goes
they
into
work?
effect.
Just
It
wondering.
keeps
We're looking it up, Eric, to see if we can see
Okay.
when it goes into effect.
My understanding of it while you're looking at that is that it freezes the percentages at where they are in 2020 for 2021 so that they can't have their knees cut off would be otherwise. So
Probably for this exact reason,
Yeah.
so that we can plan properly.
Well, 2021 is an assessment year too, so which will be interesting to see. So 2022 could have a positive impact on our budget.
Yeah, I'm not, well, I'll keep looking. I'm not quite sure
Okay,
when this
no
would
worries.
take effect, but that's a great point you raise. It could certainly, have an effect on that revenue.
But it would be a positive effect, so it's just kind of
Yeah,
Yes.
a gravy category.
yeah, right.
Okay, thanks.
And why we're in this discussion about projections for next year, another line item that Preston and I talked about that we both agreed on is also on this page, and that's the building permits and the excise development tax. So the excise development tax is something that comes in at the time of subdivisions, minor subdivisions, and overall building permit fees. We took the track that we don't think, based on what could possibly happen with the economy, that we should plan on those developments stepping forward and starting their projects. So we did not include some of those developments that have come in and been approved as happening in 2021.
Because we have 4 developments, fairly sizable developments in the wing. There's the preserve, and I can never remember the name of the one over that Joe's doing across the highway.
Right?
The Lena Street Commons, and they're going to put up one building this year, though, it sounded like. And then
That co-housing.
co-housing project.
So that was the track that we took as
Yeah.
far as, again, looking at things from a conservative standpoint.
Does the space to create generate those revenues? Or is that?
No.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's, again, I think this conservative approach has always served us well. And, and from a building standpoint, who knows what's going to happen next year? But I was actually surprised to see that the Lena Street Commons was moving ahead with their infrastructure and actually planning on putting up one unit this year. So
And,
think
ba- and
there
I
based,
didn't think that was going to happen at all.
And I
You know,
think there was a time frame that they had to meet, Lena Street, that I can't remember now.
We gave them a 3-year extension, an automatic sort of 3-year extension on their preliminary plat, sketch plan, and, I can't remember. Anyway, they did, as part of the development agreement. So I think they had to get started, but yeah, I think they still could have waited until next year to implement some of that.
so
Yeah,
the
that's
general,
actually a good question. I don't remember all the details.
the general effect of being conservative is that if some of these predictions go positive, we increase our reserves. I'm wondering if that were to be the case, is there a way to, when we're looking at the capital improvement projects, have some that are earmarked for expenditure if our reserves were to significantly increase based on being conservative? In other words, you have a separate, classification of some of those projects that are dependent upon, the benefit of being conservative.
Why don't we-
Terry,
why don't we hold
Terry,
the question?
Terry, you cut out for us.
Yeah, I think our internet was a little unstable, so sorry about that. But
Couldn't,
I think your question was along the lines of, with increased reserves, I think you were going towards having certain capital projects that you all would want to see happen contingent upon certain, certain reserves happening as a result of increased revenue,
Correct.
right?
Yeah,
Right.
the gravy earmark group.
Yeah. That's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that. I've never seen it done that way. But I don't, Pam might have a different perspective, but I don't know if that's a kosher way of going about capital.
Which you wouldn't even consider doing that if the reserves weren't healthy to begin with. But if you're
Right.
Wouldn't
adding,
we just do, like, if we got a mid-year budget update next year and things look good, wouldn't we then just do a budget revision and pull something off the capital improvements plan and move forward from there?
right,
Yeah,
you could do a supplemental budget.
Yep, that's a great summary, Beth. Yep, you can revisit the budget many times throughout the year and approve budget supplements to see the budget revised, obviously, and try to make things happen or not happen.
a rolling plan. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, that seems like, I think I like our conservative approach. You look at this graph of our sales tax revenues, and taking that conservative approach has put us in a position that feels less scary in 2020 than maybe it otherwise would have. And then, if we find that there's money, then we could kind of go back and think about what services or capital improvements could be improved for the residents if that happens.
Correct, yes. I think you'll see that everything that I did within the revenues is really how I've always done it. I've always taken a conservative approach. We've always come in higher, but that's a good thing.
So
I just practice along the same way there. I would think that looking this over, probably the only place I didn't do that was with the concert series. And that's just, hoping that we get to have it next year. And if so, it'll be on track. That's really what I did.
I like that hopeful budget line. I think it's hopeful, but I would never want to tell our residents we were just not planning on it in 2021.
Yeah, it's a long enough ways away, and if for some reason, some fortunate happenings that we do get a reasonable vaccine sometime April or May of next year, I mean, that could change all these projections. So, or some form of reasonable treatment. So, there's a lot of time left on some of that stuff.
Eric, is that when they're projecting a vaccine will be
Yeah,
available?
the most recent things that I've read and heard have really been, the potential for a vaccine sometime in April or May. But who knows? I mean, I think the companies, the pharmaceutical companies are doing these vaccines, despite all the political pressure, are doing their usual conservative studies, and I don't think they're going to vary from that process much. I mean, for any of these companies to put out a vaccine that either was just ridiculously ineffective or had any even minor side effects would just be a financial disaster for them. So they're not going to bow to political pressure to try and get these things out sooner than later. And the scientific community in general, I think, is just not going to allow it. So, they're fast tracking this probably quicker than any other vaccine in history. And the reality is there was in the early 70s, there was a swine flu vaccine that came out, and they fast tracked that way too quick. I mean, this was like, I'm trying to think, it was 78 or 79. It got fast tracked way too quick, and it had some pretty serious side effects. And it actually ended up setting the vaccine industry back probably a decade or so in terms of trust. So I think they all still have that lesson in mind going forward. So we'll see. Just if we get a vaccine, it would be great.
Just a quick question on looking at the license permits and fees. I'm seeing that we've really knocked down the amount of short-term rental licenses we're estimating for next year.
Thanks for saying that, Russ. I was just going to bring it up. So why that looks that way is because it's a 2-year license. So those licenses are staggered. And
Okay.
so those are the licenses that will have their fees due next year. That's why it's so different from this year.
Thank you.
It's helpful.
Pam, I have a quick question. You had mentioned the festival, and I was just trying to look quickly. I see a revenue item called special events. Is that what you were referring to?
Yes.
And then there's an expense for festivals and events, which is $30,000 more than that revenue. So those are generally, the festivals and events are generally an expense in net to us.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the revenues on that, most of those revenues come from sponsors, that businesses that sponsor the concert series, so they can have promotional and advertisement. Some of that is also from vendor fees, from the foods and other items that are sold during the concert series, like the beer. Those come back and go into that line item. The other things that are included in there is also the Love Your Valley Fest, which is, we make a significant amount of revenue on that. I'm trying to remember without it in front of me a number off the top of my head, but it could be around 15, 18, even 20, depending on the year. So those all go into that particular line item, because Love Your Valley Fest actually is a fundraiser to support the concert series, but the town does offset that. And that line item, Terry, also includes Love Your Valley Fest, because there are costs that we incur for that. Movie nights, the free movie nights in the park, and the concert series.
Great. Thank you for explaining that.
Another thing you'll notice on this revenue sheet is, of course, you probably already all know this, the decrease in interest income.
Yeah.
Not that we make a lot of money off of our interest, but it's just, you'll note that from this year to next.
The last treasury bond I heard was 0.69% or something like that.
We need to go into stocks. Apparently, the stock market's kicking ass.
Depends on the day.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm out.
The only other thing to note on here is 425GOO refuse collection fees. That's a pass-through line item. So those are the fees we take in for what we collect on the trash and recycling. And then that's a straight pass-through into an expenditure line item. Oh, I just thought of something else, but I can't remember what it was. The other is, it's not a straight pass through, but the lodging tax. The lodging tax, which is 407GOO, that revenue, 70% of what is received there is in an offsetting line item. The council currently has a contract with the Ridgeway Area Chamber of Commerce for marketing, and 70% of that line item goes there.
Earmarked expenses.
Then we have mosquito control reimbursement coming from the county. That's line item 443GOO, which goes towards a specific line item that we have in expenditures.
Hey, Pam,
Comes
never
late in the
mind.
year.
Sorry, never mind.
And then that's okay. You'll probably think of it in a minute.
No, I was looking at two different lines. I'm good.
And then another thing is within the reimbursable fees, 442GOO bonds and permits reimbursement, that line item is a pass-through, but it's in an offsetting year. So it's never going to be exactly the same. So what that is at the time that we issue an encroachment permit or other permits to enter in town rights of way, we'll take a bond. And especially when it comes to construction, we hold those bonds for a year to make sure that street compaction and things like that are okay before we reissue. So that will never show as a pass-through because those things are held at different months throughout different years. And so it will never correlate. The specific ownership tax, if you all don't know, that's a tax that comes in to us through the county. Utility franchise tax, that's San Miguel Power, Black Hills Energy, telephone. USPS rental fees. If some of you don't know, we own the property that the Postal Service has their building on, and we have a lease with them, and they pay us to have the building on our property.
Just a little background on that utility franchise tax as it relates to SMPA. So that's a fee that all of the account members pay on their bill on a monthly basis, which SMPA collects and then turns over directly to the town to be used under whatever the charter use of that fund is, whether it goes into the general fund or if it's earmarked for, some sort of projects or renewables. Some of the municipalities earmark it for energy conservation and renewables. Some of it goes into the general fund.
And that's true of telephone taxes, they collect taxes and they remit to us also. We do have agreements with all our utility companies that have franchises within our community. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the revenue page for the general fund? We can either go to expenditures for general fund right now, or we can go to the revenues for the water and sewer
Can we
funds.
stay on general fund? I think
Sure.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
To keep it all in this. Yeah, me too.
Okay. So within the general fund, it's each part of the fund is broken down by different departments. So the first few pages, page 2 and 3, is administrative. That includes everything that happens with in here at Town Hall, and also the council, with the council initiatives. Page 4 is streets and maintenance of roads. 5 is our parks and facilities. And the word environment's in there. That relates to what we call urban forest management, which is our care of our trees and rights of ways. And then the last page, which is 6, is law enforcement. And then we go to page 7, which is we'll get to later, which goes into our totals. So pages 2 and 3 is broken down again in subcategories. The first is personnel, which are wages for all the employees outside of those other divisions of the town, the streets, the parks, and law enforcement. It also includes the town council and the planning commission compensation. And then we have our professional services, which is where our town attorney, our town engineer, IT. We have a fee that we pay the county treasurer for collecting property tax for us. And then we have some contractual services, which some of those you would see on that corresponding sheet that shows the location of expenditures. There's Muni Revs. We talked about them earlier. They help us now with our sales tax collection. We're not doing all that in-house anymore. And then there is our refuse collection franchise, which is that pass-through fee. Then we have administrative expenses, just a catch-all for everything, including our insurances. We've got property and casualty, our unemployment tax. And there again is the payment out of that reimbursable bonds and permits that I talked about earlier. That's a revenue, but doesn't always have a corresponding offsetting number based on the fact that it comes in at different times of the year. Then we have our general office expenses that are just normal expenses, postage and telephone and our office equipment. Then we go into our community and economic development, which included our events and festivals, which we were talking about earlier, concert series and Love Your Valley Fest. Community outreach, which also includes our creative district and Main Street, and Region 10, which we have highlighted because we're still in conversations with them to try to understand where we're going to be in that project by the end of the year and into next year. I also placed yellow in the affordable housing line item, thinking that council might want to discuss that to see if there was anything they might want to do with those funds in 2021. The difference of what is remaining in that account is what was expended the end of this year, that 14,960 minus what was at the beginning of the year.
And again, sorry to jump in,
No,
that
that's fine.
14,960 was that amount, the town council that you all approved to underwrite the tap fees related to Habitat's triplex project. You all approved that back in, I want to say February or March, pre-COVID actually.
Which then became a revenue to the other funds.
Right,
Correct.
that's right.
Yeah,
So,
Then-
Pam,
sure.
can I ask you a quick question on
Uh-huh.
on expenses? So you've got health insurance being pretty flat. And I know a lot of organizations this year are not expecting big increases, but have you heard from our carrier what percentage increase we're expecting for the year?
Yes, we had a 4.7 increase based on the fact that we're in a small group plan, based on our size. So yeah, those are our actual numbers.
Okay, and we're still utilizing CEBT.
Yes,
Yes.
we entered into a contract with them a few months ago.
Okay,
Well, we didn't enter into it, we renewed it.
right. I mean, that's actually a pretty reasonably low increase off of, I mean, that's, compared to those years where we're seeing double-digit increases every year, so.
Well, and
That's
they're
encouraging.
yes, and they're also giving us a dividend this year.
Right.
But the amount's unknown right now.
Yeah.
So that's why I've estimated it at where it's at, but it'll probably, when we get that dividend, it won't go back into the specific line items. It'll go into as a revenue. It'll show it coming in as a credit in our revenue line items.
Good.
Couple things
you.
I want to mention that particularly the new council members, are you guys aware of our wellness program? There's
See it here.
a $700 chunk you can apply to a lot of different things. I've seen people spend it on everything from massages or chiropractic to buying a new bike. So just want to know that once you know that that's there, and it goes away at the end of the year if you haven't used it. So, and then Pam, you were talking about the affordable housing line item, and you were starting to say something about the balance, the difference between the 14,960 and the 35,151. That's 20,000.
Right. That's why I left that area in 2021 empty but yellow in case the council wanted to use those funds in 2021. I just wanted to bring it to your attention that money's remaining.
We might want to look at plugging that roughly 20,000 in there. I would agree that I'd like to see us be able to put a number in there in the $15,000 range, seeing that that's what we spent this year.
Would that be independent of the Space to Create expenditures?
Yeah.
So it'd be up above and beyond that?
It'd be a chunk of money that we could have in the budget that would be available for paying for things like water and sewer tap fees if
So
another
he's
project.
saying to put the amount in there.
That's if I'm wrong.
So
And so you guys who weren't on council remember that $35,000 originally came, I think this came up when we talked about Habitat, but that was from the sale of a chunk of land with Lena Street, right?
Correct.
So we decided that if we brought in that money from housing, it made sense to set it aside to be used for affordable housing.
that's correct. And some of that was also monies that you had set aside for the Affordable Housing Committee. I forget their names now. It changed. But
Oh.
we had made a few contributions to that. So I set up a separate bank account, and that's the funds that are in that bank account.
That's right. There were a couple at $2,500.
Right. We never expended those funds.
So would it, that just brings up another point. Would it make sense to try and figure out somewhere out of the general fund to toss $5,000 or $10,000 a year into that fund, just to sort of keep it a little bit liquid for, when things like the Habitat for Humanity thing come up, and we need to purchase water taps from our enterprise funds or something along those lines.
That was my point. Yep.
Mhm.
And I
So
don't know
you're
what that number is, but it would be nice just, to have some money in there so that we're not, then if those things come up, we're not scrambling to sort of go, okay, where out of the general fund can we pull these
Right, to do
monies?
supplemental
Yeah.
budget requests.
And I
We
think
could,
that's a priority that we have said is important to us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I moved to put 15K into that yellow slot.
or we can just put the full amount in there. If you expend it, that it's there. If not, it'll still remain there and you'll see it next year.
Yeah, the balance is 21 something. So she's saying just take the
Oh.
difference in those two numbers and plug them in for 2021.
Okay.
Right. Just so you know, we typically, at the end of this budget process, we end up having to make some cuts here and there, and hopefully we won't have to cut that. I heard Eric saying maybe even, take that 21 and change and add another $5,000 to it from somewhere else. Try and keep it flush. I love that idea. I'm not sure whether we'll be able to do it or not.
So
Would you
the
do
35,
that?
Pardon me?
Would you like me to do that? That amount plus 5?
Let's do that for now. I like that.
just round it to 25 or something.
Yeah,
Is everyone good with that?
Yeah.
And we'll see if we can keep it.
Well, I think as we look at this preliminary budget and the end fund balance that's budgeted at this point, it actually puts us in pretty good shape. That end fund balance gives us well in excess of 6 months of operating expenses, which has kind of been our goal to some extent. And so, I mean, I want to be conservative about this, but I also want to make sure that we're taking care of things in town that need to be taken care of. We haven't gotten to the parks thing yet, but that was, one of the things I was going to bring up is that, we need to make sure that we're maintaining our infrastructures, including those things, and not letting town go to look a little shabby. And I think, this affordable housing piece is just another piece of that. If we can somehow keep that fund a little bit solvent, even if it's not a ton of money in there, so that we have that flexibility down the road if we need it for, it seems like the water and sewer tap thing is the thing that generally comes up for these affordable housing pieces. So
It's also consistent with the master plan to be
Yes.
proactive in that area.
Okay.
So page 3 is our minimal vehicle expense within the general fund. That's really just the truck we use for the building inspector. Capital outlay for office equipment. There's our debt service under that that's the ramp bond. And then council initiatives, which we talked about looking at the November workshop, because I haven't received everything yet. And we want to make sure we have everything when we look at those.
So the numbers that are in there now, Pam, are things we have to receive letters on.
Yes, those are requests I've already received.
Like I see the Colorado West Land Trust jumps quite a bit.
Right. Mhm. And right. And at that November meeting, I'll get you all those letters from everyone.
Sounds good.
A question on council initiatives. Is the new youth council, is that something that we have expense for, or should we, other than administrative time? Or
I can't imagine that there's significant expense other than office supplies.
unless you're going to buy them badges or something.
I like that idea. I should get them.
I mean, maybe even a small fund for little stuff like that, $500 or something.
We lost you again.
Maybe even a small fund like $500 just for incidentals for that.
You hear he was asking about the Youth Advisory Council and whether whether that should have a small amount.
Yeah. So sorry, everybody. We lost you. We completely lost the conversation.
Yeah, we got booted out of Zoom, and so Harry, you were, I think, talking about the youth council, and then we got.
Yeah, it was just a quick suggestion. They might create a line item for a small, like a $500 budget for that, for incidentals associated with swag or badges, as Eric said, or something.
Well, we could also just take that out of the general fund.
Okay.
That works.
Yep.
So I just want to be mindful of time. I've been texting with Bo, and based on how I timed the agenda, we have that executive session planned for 10:45. Is that, I mean, we can pause at 10:45 and just pick right back up when we're done with that executive session, or I can just tell Bo to hang on for a while. What would you all prefer?
Let's not make Bo wait for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with
Okay.
that.
Well, we have a few more minutes. I just wanted to make sure we're all aware of time. so.
Does anyone need to take a break before then? Everybody okay?
You
Tessa
break?
needs
I have to pee, but I can just mute you guys.
Yeah, don't take us with you.
All right.
Everybody
So
else?
we can go on to streets.
Yes.
Yep.
Again, the subcategories are consistent within every single part of the fund. We've got the personnel, administrative, which is office and things that happen at the administrative level. We have operating expenses, which is everything to do with the supplies and safety equipment, the gravel that goes on the roads, and then of course we've got the tree trimming and landscaping and rights of ways. Then we have the shop expense, which is sharing in the cost of the public works facility. All the vehicle expenses, that's all the vehicles that are used by the streets and maintenance department. And then their capital outlay, which is including purchase of a water truck, which we had in the 2020 budget, and we did not expend this year, so we moved it into 2021.
And is that water truck split between all three funds, or is it just within the general fund?
No, it's not. It's Mike had found a truck that was actually less than $50,000, like 49 something. I don't know if it's still there or not, but no, it's just to wet down the roads when he grades.
What
Okay.
is it? Just in the water fund?
No, it's just in the street fund.
No, just in the street.
Yeah.
Just curious, what's the matter with the old water? Is it
It's
end of
old.
It's not that old. It
Oh,
doesn't-
yeah, Mike said it's rusted through.
Oh, okay.
I asked him if he thought it could last another year, and he said he didn't think so.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, this is their original water truck. It's the one that they use when they they go in and they grade, and then they water, and then they roll. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's that truck.
It's the same truck they've been using since I moved here.
Right. Yeah, I think it's the same truck they've had from the get-go.
Okay.
If you don't have any questions there,
I have one quick one on street lighting, 638 G02.
sure. Yeah.
A little insider information from my job is that it's possible that there's quite a few street lights that Ridgeway has that haven't been charged at all for some time. And I'm going through a process to identify that. So it's possible that annual expense may go up a little bit,
Oh, okay.
but nothing definitive. So it's just an FYI. I don't know if it's worth trying to pad that line item in
What do you-
anticipation of that or not.
I can reach out to them, Terry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Them would be me.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is that still an initiative you're working on, Terry?
Yeah,
'Cause we talked
yeah,
about
but-
that months ago.
Right, and I just haven't gotten back to it. I've been working with Nuclear and Natarita to deal with their things first. They're trying to go dark sky, so I'm busy doing their lighting inventory. But coming back to that, that was my initial take, is that there's been a number of streetlights that have been not recorded. So anyway, it may only go up $1,000 or something. So it's probably in the noise.
Terry,
If
I have,
it happens.
I have a question on that
Pardon me?
point. I have a question on
Uh-huh.
that. It
Yeah.
just reminded me, I walk around town a lot at night, and it looks like you guys have been slowly replacing some of the sodium vapor lights with LEDs.
That was what I'm finding out too. Yeah. And apparently they were, the ones they replaced them with were too bright, had too high a lumen. And I forget his name. Gosh, the guy in the town.
Yeah.
Jeff Rivera.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Jeff's been experimenting with some dimmers to dim those down. There are significant energy savings to the town, so it lowers the electric bill. But at the same time, the replacements weren't dark sky compliant. Actually, they were, but they were still higher color temperature and too high a lumen. So he's dimming them down. So it's a whole process that has been a project off on my desk I haven't gotten back to. But
Well, and just so you know, there's they seem to be some sort of interesting thing where the beam they cast is oblong. It's like it goes up and down the street depending on how you align it. And there's at least a couple of them, this is the new LEDs I'm talking about, that are not aligned to the street. And so they shine really brightly into people's yards.
yeah, that's not good.
So that, and I think the one is Mary and Clinton. You can, if you want to go out at night and take a look at that one.
Okay.
And then I can think of a number of the old sodium vapor ones. One in particular is at the corner of Hyde and Cora, that the neighbors joke that it's a motion desensor, motion non-detector. I mean, it goes out when you walk up to it. It's obviously starting to.
Yeah, that's a new design that we're perfecting.
But it's
Yeah,
it's almost never on. And anyway, that my big point is, if we're slowly transitioning from the sodium vapor to all LED, that should offset the lights that haven't been charged for, I would
Yeah,
hope.
the whole town lighting plan was done back in like 2010 and hasn't really been revised. And so I'm trying to work with Jeff and Chase and Preston to kind of really get our arms around it. The unique thing about the town is they own a number of the lights, whereas usually in Uray, for example, we own the lights and we charge a fixed fee. Some of the lights you own are actually on meters. So it's a big tangled spaghetti mess that I'm trying to untangle and eventually get our hands around it.
My recollection is that one or two or three are metered, and then we just multiplied those metered numbers by the total number of lights, and that's what we've been paying on.
There's 3 or 4 different ways it's been going on. So I'm trying to unwind it all, and then we'll come up with a comprehensive makeover for the whole thing.
Great. Well, sorry to take you down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. Sorry, I brought it up. Sorry, but the point
That's great.
was
It's a great
it may be
conversation.
worth throwing an extra few bucks into that line item. It's so in the noise compared to the whole budget. It's probably not material.
Yeah, no, I increased it. Thank you, Terry.
Okay.
So Bo has hopped on. Hey, Bo, how you doing? Thanks for joining.
Hey, good morning. How's everybody doing? And this is fresh and new for me. You guys are a couple hours into it, so a
Morning, Bo.
little
And
bit
you've
worried.
been able to refresh your coffee, apparently.
I have had 3 cups.
That's scary.
Well, if everyone's ready, I think, Bo, we can move into the executive session if you're all right by that.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. If we could get an executive session for the purpose of receiving legal advice and for determining positions of matters that may be subject to negotiation pursuant to 24-6-4024B and 24-6-4024E to discuss Chapter 8, Section 4 of the Ridgeway Municipal Code, marijuana.
So moved.
Seconded.
All right. Motion made by Beth, seconded by Tessa. Any other discussion? We need a roll call vote. I see Kevin has run to the little boy's room. Maybe we should wait till he comes back. I don't know. I suppose we could just go ahead with the roll call vote and it'll be close.
Yeah,
to
that's fine. We would still have the 2/3 majority or the 75% that we need. So
Counselor Cheek?
Aye.
Bramley is not present at the moment. Lakin?
Aye.
Meyer?
Aye.
Schuyler?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Aye.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Beth and Bo, go through the dance you need to on recording.
Yep. So it is October 17th and the time is now 10:46 p.m. For the record, I am the town attorney. As required by the open meeting law, this executive session is being electronically recorded. Also present at this executive session are the following persons. Town Manager Preston Neal, Town Clerk Pam Kraft, Mayor Pro Tem Eric Johnson, Mayor John Clark, Council Member Russ Myers, Council Member Terry Schuyler, Council Member Beth Lakin, Council Member Kevin Gramley, and Council Member Tessa Cheek. This is an executive session pursuant to 24-6-4024B for receiving legal advice and 24-6-4024E for determining positions for matters that may be subject to negotiation. This is regarding Chapter 8, Section 4 of the Ridgeway Municipal Code regarding marijuana. I caution each participant to confine all discussions to the stated purpose of the executive session and that no formal action may occur in the executive session. If at any point in the executive session, a participant believes that the discussion is going outside the proper scope of the executive session, please interrupt the discussion and make an objection. As the town attorney, it is my opinion that the discussion of the matters announced in the motion to go into executive session constitute a privileged attorney-client communication, and therefore I am recommending that we cease the recording. Executive session pursuant to 24-6-4024B for the purpose of receiving legal advice and 24-6-4024E for determining positions for matters that may be subject to negotiation. If at any point during the executive session, anybody felt like we went outside the scope of the executive session, please raise your concern. Hearing none, we will conclude the executive session and return to the open meeting. All right, I'm going to drop off and let you guys enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Bo.
Thanks, Bo.
Have a great
Really
day.
appreciate
Bo.
it.
Thanks, everybody.
Everyone, can I take a break for 3 minutes?
Let's
We're way.
5-minute break. We'll come back at 11:15.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
What do you do, Kaya? You want to eat?
I'm gonna just
Sure.
I guess it's done.
Did you already leave? I don't have a phone number for him. Unless they hand off a cell phone to those guys.
It's,
do they?
he'll come back. I'll talk with him. I mean, this is the right thing to do. I made myself. hey, Joanne, can you hear me?
Again,
Welcome.
thank you.
We just took a quick break. We came out of the executive session. And we might pick back up on the budget presentation and then transition into the CIP discussion. So just hang on a little bit. But thanks for being here.
Background.
Cool.
Sorry. Had some nursing duties to attend to.
How's Kay doing?
Good,
Good.
good. Still not very, still limited mobility, but doing okay.
Good. Good.
Okay, so where do we want to take it from here? We're, as far as I can tell on the schedule, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're running behind because we haven't gone through the entire budget document, right?
I think that's right, but I think that's okay too. We want to be thorough, but yeah, we were on general fund expenditures, and I think we were coming through.
We're on parks.
Yeah, we were on parks.
Or we're heading into parks.
So we can let Pam keep running us through that.
We're going
Is
to
that
the
all
park.
right?
Let's go to the park.
So we're on page 5 in the general fund. Parks, again, following the same format, the personnel, admin, which is more office type things. The community center is included in here because it's a facility. Operating expenses, which are again, are maintenance and supplies. And urban forest management is contained within here, and that's where I was talking about, which would be the tree trimming, but those would be trees within parks. The tree trimming and removal for streets was in the street fund. There's our mosquito control line item, which I said the county contributes towards. And we have vehicle expense for the vehicles and equipment that are used within the parks, and then capital outlay. If there's no questions, I'll just go to law enforcement.
So, actually, I want to make a comment. I kind of alluded to it earlier. I think, our parks are really sort of a, crown jewel of this town, particularly Hartwell Park and some of the other areas. And I really want to make sure that we are budgeting enough money, and even if we have to increase the budget a little bit, to maintain garden spaces within the park and those sorts of things so that they look good. There's some older garden spaces in the park, those ones that are, kind of boxed timbers. They really haven't had any good maintenance in a while, and just sort of weed and grass pits. And I think we need to look at revamping those a little bit. And then additionally, for whatever reason, we seem to have lost a lot of trees over the last year. That almost a whole line of trees by the library, and odds and ends of trees up along Sherman Street. And I think we really need to make sure that we're budgeting replacements for those and figuring out the why that those trees died. I mean, those ones along the library were really, really healthy looking, and all of a sudden just tanked. So I don't know whether it was a water issue or whether they weren't, from our water system wasn't getting adequate water to them or what. But I think we really need to make sure that we replace stuff that got lost in the last year or two and really maintain the stuff that's there.
Absolutely, Eric. Just want to hop in for a second. And in relation to those trees, Chase isn't on the call. I can check in with him I don't know the reason why those trees you were talking about by the library didn't end up, why it ended up the way it did. But I know Chase was working pretty hard with our arborist, Tyler, I think his name is, to
Yep.
try to pinpoint why that happened and try to prevent that from happening again. And yeah, you're right. We definitely want to, or I think we want to kind of budget to make sure that those trees, all trees get replaced if they end up getting removed or end up dying for whatever reason. And I think we've largely done that or tried to accommodate for that here in this next budget. But point well taken.
We've also put money in for the planter boxes for next year.
I saw that.
And we have also increased the line item for seasonal employees so that can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. We just got this weird thing on the screen. So that we can ensure that we have staffing for the full time that the parks are in use, and we've actually even extended that time frame. So
Good.
we're hoping that will assist in some of those things too.
And I see that you doubled the park improvements capital outlay budget line item.
Yes, those you will find on the sheet that is titled line item locations of expenditures.
You're cutting in and out, Pam, for some reason.
I know it's our internet. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, our internet keeps going in and out. We keep losing you too. So I was saying that those expenditures are on the sheet that says line item locations of expenditures in 2021. And that line item that you were asking about, Terry, 775 POO park improvements includes chipper rental and extending the water line from West Cottonwood Park to the east. Did you all get a chance to look at that list? Yeah. You can
On
go
capital
over it
improvements?
afterwards. Can you hear me?
Yes, we did.
Okay, sorry. We'll plan on hitting some of those bigger items once we get through the budget, because I just want to make sure you know some of those things that we're planning on doing.
Okay.
All right. Our next piece of the general fund is law enforcement. Again, following the same subcategories, the personnel office expense, their operating expense, which includes everything that they need within their office, their vehicle expense, and capital outlay. I think the major thing to note within law enforcement is that it includes our courts, our municipal judge and our municipal court clerk, but also that the town pays through our general fund for the victim advocate program for the whole county. And then we're reimbursed through grant funds and the portion that the county and the city are contributing, and then we have our portion. So our budget looks larger because of that, but those funds are shown coming back in the revenues.
And I just want to highlight real quick, and I think you all should know this by now, but Elaine and Shane, Elaine in particular, have worked really hard over the last several months to secure additional grant funding. We have the VOCA grant and then funding from VAIL. Those are the acronyms, but totaling just near $40,000, which in 2021 substantially lowered each agency's contribution amount. So the projected contribution amounts have been communicated to the county and the city, and I haven't heard back yet, but that number for 2021 is much lower as a result of the work that Elaine and Shane put in for grant funding.
It's about $2,400 for each of the 3 agencies for next year.
That's great.
Yeah.
So on page 7, we come to our ending totals are right now projected and draft expenditures at 2.8 million. Then on that page, on page 7, we will take out any potential transfers that will come out for capital projects. And one of those right now, and it's highlighted because of course we're going to discuss that with council and see how you want to proceed with this project, is 35,000 towards Heritage Park. There's our Tabor emergency reserves, and then our ending fund balance at $1,095,552.
Great.
So we could go really quick to that sheet that I was referring to, the line item locations of expenditures, and just within the general fund, go through those, and I'll just recap them. And if you have any, you want to have any discussion on any of them, please just jump in. We have included within the general fund $18,000 for an intern to help in the administrative offices. We've also included $30,000 for master plan implementation and subdivision updates through the hiring of a consultant. In contractual services, we're looking at looking into codification services. That would be codification of the municipal code, a salary survey, which would be for the whole organization. So that would include the water and sewer employees. Possible need for building plan review for large projects. And that would include building and mechanical inspections for those projects. That could also translate into the Space to Create project. And then infrastructure inspections for those same projects. So those funds are there in that contractual services line item. Then Creative District has an annual appropriation to the Creative Corridor, which is a corridor from, well, John, you would know better than me, but it's in
The kind of western slope, well, actually, Salida is not a western slope, but there's 5 creative districts that have joined
5
together.
creative districts. Okay, great.
Office grant.
And then there's some, we've just listed in the Main Street program some very small projects, but that's just to keep us apprised within our office of where those things are coming out of. There's that number on affordable housing, the 20,191, which we decided we were going to put 25 in. In office equipment, we've got 2 computer replacements. And then, as we talked about earlier, this is the next page, the broadband, we don't know those figures yet, so those are still yellowed in.
And just to elaborate on that, I think it was a September meeting. We had Virgil and Michelle from Region 10, and you all provided direction to move forward with some anchor institution connections. I don't want to say the group has gone dark, but I think there's a lot of stuff going on right now. Doug, CCAT, and Deeply Digital, they got their hands full with a ton of different stuff. I'm a little bit worried about that work that council kind of provided direction on being completed by the end of year. And really, I mean, the no dig date is coming up here in the next month. And there was talk about extending the grant deadline through the first quarter of 2021, but I have not heard back from Connie, Michelle, Virgil, that whole team yet. I'm hoping a meeting is set up soon so that we can get some clarity on how we're moving forward for this fiscal year, and then what we need to be planning for 2021. So like Pam said, we're not quite sure yet. That's why it's yellowed, and we're hoping to have some clarity soon.
Could I ask a quick question just on a couple of the acronyms here? I mean, I know it's SAMPIS obviously, but what's CN and what's IRU?
IRU is indefeasible right of use.
Okay,
Not that the actual verbiage is better.
and what's CN?
Carrier neutral.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Within the streets budget, we've put into consulting the $50,000 for the Amelia Street design that was in 2020. We've moved that over to 2021. We have the annual amounts that we put in for crack sealing and paving. We also added this year $20,000 for curb and gutter repair. That would be in the ramp areas that have been hit by the loaders, repairing those. We've got storm drainage that again was carried over from this year, 2020 into 2021. Drainage improvements throughout town and the valley pan between Mountain Market and Lupita's building on the alley there. And then we have also some things that were also included in 2020 that are now also in 2021, which was a landscaping contract for the planters in the ramp area, tree replacement, and Eric, to speak to that, there was to be some tree replacement this year. I haven't seen those invoices come through yet, but I know that Chase talked about replacing some of those this year in 2020. And then the planter boxes. We have the water truck in there. We talked about that earlier.
And real quick, sorry to jump in.
Sure.
Just coming back on the tree stuff, Eric, to what you were talking to, we'll double check with Chase and the guys in Public Works to make sure enough is allocated to ensure that everything that needs to happen can happen.
Right. So I guess the only other issue I brought up in terms of this is, like I said, is those old planter boxes that are in the park. They're log, sort of raised bed log structures that are just, they used to be, fairly well maintained in the past, and they've sort of fallen into fairly significant disrepair. I think we should either, one, maintain those as they exist and see if we can get them cleaned up and looking better, replace them, or just get rid of them, because right now they're just kind of eyesores.
I agree.
Great. And like I said, we will have the staffing next year. I think we're fine with funding. We could take that out of the regular parks maintenance line item, but if you'd like, I can increase the planter box line item.
However it works the best for you from a budget standpoint, it doesn't really matter to me.
I'm going to change the language on that to
Okay.
be planter boxes along Highway and within Hartwell Park. And I'm going to increase that dollar amount.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I think Eric's point is that staff, Chase, you guys need to go out there and just make a quick evaluation. My guess is it might make more sense to just take them out and reseed those spots, but if you guys,
Or replace them with something. I mean,
yeah,
either way.
well, I mean, to me, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but to me, the project has changed the emphasis, the landscaping emphasis around downtown to such, but I'm not sure we need those planters in Hartwell Park anymore, because there's all the other planted areas and the bulb outs and things. So we need to balance that. And from my perspective as a landscaper, it's a lot of work. And so you need to kind of prioritize, make sure that you're only putting your energy in the spots that are paying the most dividends. Enough said on that one, but staff, feel free to make an executive decision on that. You take those out. If they're not completely replaced, it's more sustainable.
Understood.
So-
We'll evaluate that.
Right. And if we do replace them, we are going to probably have to put some sod in there. So we would need those funds. John, just so you know, you were cutting in and out a little bit,
Okay. Think
or
we're all-
something, or somebody's got something's, yeah, but we can hear you a little hard.
There's a bit of an echo.
Okay.
Does anybody have 2 devices on Zoom?
Great, okay. So within the Parks Fund, we've placed $5,000 for Rusty Weaver maintaining Weaver Park. That is something that council had asked us to put in a number of years ago, and it's been in there annually. The Parks and Trails map update, that was slated for 2020, and that's now in 2021. And then we've included a consultant to do a study on the river corridor. And then we have the landscaping at Town Hall and the gazebos. That would be the Hartwell and Athletic Park gazebos. Those funds are in there. We're looking at the Conservation Youth Course coming to help us this year. So we placed some money in there for camping and meals for them. And then again, back to that park improvement, we've got the chipper rental for the branches. We've increased that line item. Usually it's around $1,000, but there's so many branches. The guy said, we're gonna need that chipper for a lot longer this year. And then we have added extending the water line from West Cottonwood Park to the east. So that is the area behind the Chipeta Sun Lodge. We don't have a firm number on what that would really cost. I think really we're just kind of looking, maybe this might be a placeholder, but we do want to explore if there's a possibility to do that, to put some lines in there.
So and just to clarify, it's just extending the line. It's that parcel of land just to the north of Chipeta there, and it would not only extend the line but add a sprinkler zone. I don't know what the terminology is, something to that effect, to make sure that the grass on that parcel is taken care of. That's something I've talked a lot about, a lot with Jack Young about over the last several months, and so that figures ballpark right now.
Okay.
Jack, want to contribute?
Preston is really looking forward to that conversation.
And to his credit,
I tried to.
he's been watering that on his own. I don't know if his own dime, but he's been paying people to put his on tripod.
Right.
Yeah, but there's a town, he is using town tap there. Yeah.
Well, and that's fair. I think, he deserves a little credit for having paid for someone to do that. But I don't expect.
That was totally tongue in cheek, John.
We know that. So we've also included within parks under the community center repairs, something that was in 2020, which was the entry at the south door to Town Hall. That entry area, when it's windy, that door has come off the hinges a few times. We've had to replace the door. So we want to look at some barrier or something to help when it gets windy, so there's not a problem with the opening of that door. And then in the law enforcement, we have the Spillman software. We're not quite sure yet what that's going to be. That is the shared software program that we have with all the law enforcement in Uray County and in Montrose, through the city of Montrose. We've got the victim advocate services. We actually hire people to be on call, and that's that line item there in the contractual services. Elaine, who runs the program, is actually an employee portion of the law enforcement as a part-time employee. Then through the contract on victim advocacy, we have to show the supplies that we have budgeted for. And then we have a storage container for records for the PD and AED equipment for all the patrol cars. They don't have anything right now, so we're going to look at putting those into all the cars. They need storage for their videos, and then we budgeted money for firearms for the officers. Preston and I were kind of surprised to find out when we met with Shane that the officers are carrying their own weapons. They aren't town-owned weapons.
Surprised is an understatement. I was absolutely shocked to learn that our deputies and marshal have been using their own firearms for however long on duty. So that's the impetus for this item, to purchase firearms.
Is there liability associated with that?
I
Legal
would
liability?
imagine, I'm not an attorney by any means, but that was something that came to mind right away, Terry. So I still am a little bit in shock that was how it has been done.
That explains the Tommy gun I saw the other day then. Huh?
2,000 enough for 4
What's that,
firearms?
Eric?
Yeah, we got,
$2,000
Shane
enough
did.
for 4?
Yep, Shane got quotes for, I
Okay.
don't remember what specific. Yeah, so it's enough, yes.
That just seems cheap.
That's about 4 Glocks.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, well, good catch.
Go ahead, Pam, sorry.
Oh, that's good. And then just some office equipment in there. We're going to put a port utility switch into the law enforcement. They have a separate server from the rest of the organization, and we put some money in for a workstation computer in there. We didn't share with you, if you didn't know, that we upgraded the server and the switches and all the technical things related to computers here in Town Hall a couple months ago. So that was budgeted in 2020, and we did expend those funds.
Cool.
So that's everything for our general fund.
Nice work.
Just out of curiosity, what's the river corridor study about?
Yeah, good catch, Russ. So Tanya with the Watershed Partnership, I believe it is, and her crew over there, they've been very vocal, and Chase and I have met with them a couple times over the last several months. I could probably go on and on, but the water feature over at Rollins Park, I mean, I think it's in a good state, but it's, for lack of a better term, starting to deteriorate. So I think there's this push to make sure that we're maintaining the banks in an appropriate way and that feature in an appropriate way. Really robust discussion, but we feel that it would be good to hire a consultant to come in and do a comprehensive study of the oh my gosh, I can't talk, the river corridor there, that stretch from kind of the bridge down the Rollins Park area specifically, and help us to pinpoint what the overall status is, what the health is there of the river, and then the quality of that water feature, and help us to really navigate what it should really be. Give us some tools and strategies for upgrading it if that's the desire, or improving it if if that's the general desire. So I know it's like that's a very general and vague way to describe it, but
No, that's good, because I had heard some concerns from some members of town previously regarding some of the work we do there in that area, and its effect on the river downstream from us. So I think that's money well spent.
okay, good. Glad to hear. And that's a ballpark figure, but we feel that's enough to hire someone to come in and help us in that regard. But yeah, great catch.
All right. If there's no more questions, I'll go to the water fund. Good. All right. So the water fund is on page 8. Again, it's an enterprise fund. It's a standalone fund. So it's within the fund, we're seeing the revenues first, then the expenditures, but it starts out with the beginning fund balance. So the beginning fund balance was $561,429. And again, this is budget set up exactly the same. Our 2019 actual audited numbers, what we adopted in 2020, what I'm estimating at the end of 2020, and the draft or projected 2021. So you'll notice increase in water service charges from the adopted 2020 to the estimated year-end 2020. I feel pretty confident that's where we're going to come in at there. That may be both based on the changes that were made to the water fee charges and not really having any good basis for that. But I think it also was based on the drought this year and a lot of overuse of water. On the tap fees, I've got those both highlighted because we have some outstanding payments right now on tap fees, and I'm not sure they're going to come in this year. So I want to wait until we get closer to adoption, and I'll clean those line items up. Once again, on the tap fees for both the water and sewer fund, Preston and I are being really taking a conservative approach about construction and development. So those correlate to the discussion we had earlier about the building fees and the excise tax fees. And the other water line item for 65 WOO, that is a grant that we are looking at receiving in 2021. That is a DOLA grant that we've applied for the, what is GAC stand
Oh,
for?
granular activated carbon. Y'all learned about it the other night,
right.
right? You guys know all about granular
Granulated.
activated carbon now.
Yeah, granulated activated carbon system. Right, we talked about the other night. So within the expenditures, again, it's the same subcategories. It might be helpful at this point, though, to go back to our sheet of the line item locations of expenditures in the 2021 fiscal year budget. And on the third page, the water fund starts in that document. And what is contained in the water fund, what we would consider capital improvements or projects, is in the consulting and engineering services. We've put $40,000 for a water supply analysis. Now, that was in the 2020 budget. We've just moved it to 2021. We've got the GAC equipment. We've got it under chlorine dioxide or GAC, but I think everyone's hoping it's going to be the GAC. Or did we already know that for sure? No.
Well, pending the DOLA grant, but yes, we're hoping that.
So we have that in there at $200,000 now, and we all know that 100,000 of that's offset in the revenues through that DOLA grant. So that would be 100,000 of that money would be coming from the water fund. We're also looking at separating the irrigation lines from the town lines over by the Parkside subdivision. Under supplies and materials, we're looking at purchasing a new water meter at one of the water tanks and putting in surge and lightning protection at the water plant. Both of those were also in the 2020 budget, and it's just been moved to 2021. And your tools, the guys have asked for a walk behind asphalt and concrete cutter for those line breaks because they had a big one this year and had to tear up part of the asphalt and concrete over by the post office within the ramp project. And they realized they didn't have the equipment to really do that. So we put that in there. It's at $3,500.
Yeah, I was wondering how much that would cost. I bet it was not cheap.
Yeah, the break was a lot. Yeah. Yeah, the overall cost of tearing everything up, repairing it, and putting back in the concrete and asphalt.
Well, as we keep adding asphalt slowly, that just becomes a thing we need to have around.
Yep.
Sure. Yeah. Under the office equipment in the water fund, we're looking at a router at the water plant and another workstation computer up there. Or I actually don't think it's another, it's replacement. Under the equipment purchase in both the water and the wastewater fund, you'll see a used hydrovac excavator vacuum truck. And from what I was told by Mike, this is something that the guys have been wanting for years. It can be used for both water and sewer. And what it does is allows them, when there's a break, to go in and vacuum out and pull out all the water or sewer or whatever is in the line. So they don't have to do it manually, and they can get right in there.
All these convenience things. I think we should change the walk behind asphalt concrete cutter to a horse-drawn version.
That truck also helps with locating, with all the fiber that's going in. They can look for the utilities without digging, and therefore are less likely to damage something that's really expensive trying to get to the water break or whatever they're doing.
Thanks, Joanne. I've forgotten that. That was right. That was the importance that Mike said, that he thought we needed to do that now and move that out of the 5-year capital plan, because they're running into that when they're digging, now they have to, the fiber that they have to deal with, and they used to have to
This is
deal with that.
the hydrovac thing.
Yeah, that's the hydrovac excavator, allows them to see those lines before they break into the ground and destroy some of that conduit.
Right.
Another thing we've put in that's new this year into the taps and meters is the beginning of a replacement program to replace the meters throughout town with meters with radios. So this would be the first year of that program. I think we said it was a 4-year. We thought it was 4 years.
Yeah, because I think the total number, and Joanne's on here, you might know, the total number of meters and out there is in the ballpark of 600.
I have on here 680.
Yeah, so, well, over 4 years, that's about 150 meters a year. Oh, 680. Yeah, you have 680. Sorry, yeah. So a little over 150 meters a year. 150 meters anticipated for next year at a cost of $55,000.
You've got on here that it's 2021 to 2026, that's 6 years. Not a big deal. Whatever you need.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, let me fix that.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
And then to back up for a second, under office equipment, a $650 router. Is that a internet router or water router?
It's an internet router. That figure we got from Brian with ProVelocity.
Okay. Really
I can double check with him. Also, I should say, Brian is so fantastic to work with. ProVelocity has been super responsive. I haven't been here that long, but my experience with them has just been super positive. And just the customer service we get from them is just, again, coming from my perspective, is just dynamite. Pam may have a different perspective, hopefully not.
No, I don't. They're great.
And Brian's kind of our rep, and he's so on point.
And just so everybody knows, ProVelocity is the name of the company that bought the Clear
Deeply Digital.
Digital, and Deeply Digital was our provider for years, and this is just a new company that bought that under. Doug Seacat. So I'm glad to hear that's working out.
Yeah, and just, yeah, for like Kevin, Terry, they do all of our IT. They're our IT administrator essentially, and very responsive, which is great. I don't want to figure out this Wi-Fi stuff, but it is what it is.
That's a lot of money for a router, but it must be necessary.
We'll double check on that figure.
I'm pretty sure it's so they can reach into our main server here.
Sonic wall router. Maybe it has greater penetration through structures or something.
That's right. I mean,
And then the last thing in the water fund that we've got on that sheet is just some additional testing that we would need for the GAC at the plant. For the first year, the guys said they would need to do some extra testing just to make sure everything was working correctly. So within the fund itself, again, the same subcategories. We come to the debt service, which I went over with you earlier. We've got one of those loans that's going to be paid off in 2021, leaving us with two outstanding debts. And if you look at this, the reason that within the budget, you'll see line items that aren't being used. By state statute, I have to keep those in until there is no use of them. And so since we're over a 3-year period, you're seeing at least on one of them where we paid it off in 2019. So I think that's super encouraging myself to see debt service go down like that.
It's $168,000 additional savings, or the between estimated 2020 and projected adopted, it's $168,000 difference. That's great.
I don't quite see that, Terry.
I'm sorry, on total water fund expenditures. I'm sorry. I was reading the line below all that, the debt service.
Oh, okay. Oh. Right. Yeah, but the debt service itself, yeah. We've gone from a few years ago having 5 loans that we're paying in the water fund to 2, next year we'll just be down to 2. And so our ending fund balance in the water fund is projected right now at $1,056,498.
Should we do sewer real quick? And then,
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions before we move to sewer? Okay. And on the sewer, again, it's an enterprise fund, so it's a standalone fund. We've got the revenues first. I'm just projecting revenues on the service charges at the same, exactly the same with the tap fees. Those are highlighted because I'm waiting to see if this payment comes in 2020 or if I need to move it to 2021. And same exact categories. And if we go to the sheet that we've been working with that has the line item locations for the expenditures, on the very last page at the bottom half, you'll see the sewer fund. And what we've got, that we've got projects within that fund are $30,000 for engineering for a preliminary needs assessment to relocate the plant. That was contained in 2020 budget and moved to the 2021. In maintenance and repairs, most of these were also moved from 2020 into 2021. We've got maintenance of the lines and cammering of those lines to look for sags and roots and things that may be infiltrating those main sewer lines. A curtain between the wastewater ponds, an effluent meter, an aerator for one of the ponds, and sludge removal from the chlorine contact chamber at the wastewater plant.
Oh, never mind.
And then under equipment, you'll see the other half of that used hydrovac excavator vacuum truck.
Expensive truck.
Yeah,
Stuff.
hopefully we can get one for that price, actually. I
They
think
tend to
due
run
to-
about $250,000 new.
yeah, Mike was saying, 220. Yeah. But he's really good at finding used equipment.
He
Our
is.
Mike Jenkins, he's really good at that.
Got a good deal on that dump truck.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he loves getting those deals. He definitely loves bargaining with people. So our sewer enterprise fund ending fund balance right now is projected at $958,584. So if you look at the sewer and the water side by side in 2020, and in our 2020 adopted budget, our water fund ending fund balance was less than the sewer. And this year it's higher than our sewer. The water is higher.
Is that because of those exorbitant water rates we have?
It is because of the increase in water rates.
So
But I
really-
was telling somebody just this week after council, like the ability to jump on that DOLA grant and switch filtration, and those are reasons we have a nice, healthy reserve in our water fund. Like that, it's the responsible thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does it mean we're absorbing more water? Less going into the sewer?
That's a good question. I don't know.
So I was just going to continue with the budget and then maybe we'll take our lunch break. I think we can get through it fairly quickly.
Sure.
Does that sound
We're gonna-
good?
Yep,
Okay.
sounds good.
So page 12 is the general improvement district. Again, I don't have any numbers yet to report on that. Then we go into our capital projects funds. Page 13 is the ramp project note account, and I don't have any numbers there yet for you. We'll talk about those in November. Page 14 is Space to Create project. And right now with Space to Create, we're waiting to find out about some funding that was supposed to come through grant funding that went directly to ArtSpace. So right now, I don't really have exact numbers in here, but we should have that soon.
And just to add to some, sorry to jump in. Like
No,
that.
that's good.
This gets a little convoluted because it deals with our pre-development grant and agreement with DOLA, but having trouble pinpointing exactly what this expenditure really needs to be in 2021. Pam already mentioned it. We have some like contributions from other entities that were supposed to be funneled through us so that we could show DOLA that those were contributions coming from us. Those contributions were remitted directly to ArtSpace. So we're trying to figure out how that needs to be depicted here in the budget. We're working with DOLA. So that's probably not a very good explanation, but we're working through trying to figure out what needs to be depicted here.
Work in progress.
Yep.
Yeah.
Preston, I sent you a couple emails to the issue or the item that I thought would be a capital improvement project issue was related to Space to Create. So I don't know if it becomes an expense or a capital expenditure, but we can still
Let me
cover
bring
it
up the
later.
email. I think that would. Okay. Was there an attachment?
There was two emails. One should have had a PowerPoint to it or a PDF of a PowerPoint.
Oh, okay, so microgrid proposal.
Yeah.
Okay, let me share my screen real quick and we can go through
Do
this.
you want to cover that now? I mean, it could be something that we could cover later if it ends up being.
Why don't we, yeah, if you're amenable, why don't we let Pam finish through
Yep.
budget stuff, and then we can certainly come back to this. Is that all right by you?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
Let's revisit that capital improvement.
All right, so page 15 is the athletic park pavilion. I don't have any numbers in here because I know that project's going to be done soon and I really want to give you those final numbers. So that's why I didn't even put anything in there and even try yet, but we'll have that by the time we come back in November, hopefully have all those numbers. And then on page 16 is something we wanted to talk to you about, which is the Heritage Park improvements. So what I've done here is we had this discussion at staff level about if council chooses to follow through and do this project in 2021, where we were going to find those funds. So we are proposing using the Main Street mini grant funds for the next 3 years. So we have 5 years of funding or $50,000, but we can take those funds at any time. So we decided we'd pull 3 years or 30,000 from that. And then there is the CCI technical grant. Oh, I spelled that wrong. Which we placed the $10,000 for 2021 into there, which if the project is approved at $75,000 would require a $35,000 contribution from the town.
And this one, it gets tough with this one because, as you might recall, back right around the time COVID started, we only got one bid to complete both phases of the Heritage Park project, and the price that came back was exorbitant. It was way above what the town had budgeted for. And then COVID happened, and you all provided staff direction to try to clean up the area in the short term. That happened. Did it help significantly? Maybe not, but I think it helped at least a little bit. And then Deidre was able to secure a grant from AARP for $5,000. We coupled that with our 2020 Main Street grant. And after direction from you all, we moved forward with phase 1, priority 1, which was just the irrigation elements of the Heritage Park improvement plan. And that irrigation around the visitor center, that irrigation stuff around the visitor center has just been installed. And I think they're pretty darn near complete with that, or finished with that, so which is great. So these numbers may change. I want to work with Deidre. Deidre's going on vacation, but I'll work with her and Chase to figure out what we might need to budget for if council wants to move forward with the rest of the phases, the rest of the Heritage Park Improvements project as a whole. Just want to make sure that we have enough money to see it through.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gateway to town, and I think it's really important that look good, and it certainly doesn't currently. So.
Yeah, Preston, have you responded to Hillary's email asking for a site tour and work session with?
I haven't, and there was kind of a reason for that. May not be the best reason. I wanted to get through today and see what you all were thinking in relation to the project. I don't ever want to assume, but I assumed everyone would be on board with, let's try to get this done. And then I was going to respond and make sure that we circle around with them and get them what they need, and convey to them what the plan is. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I haven't responded to her, and I thought maybe we should at least let her know that we're working on it. But
yeah, I'll respond here, and then right after the meeting probably.
no rush. No worries. Yeah, no, I think this is something we got to get done. Okay, so do we want to? What do we want to do? It's 12:11. We haven't dived into the capital improvements section yet, which we were going by the agenda. We were going to have started off at 11:15, or basically an hour behind.
So I did my bad. I did a horrible job timing the agenda, but
It's
I
not-
think if we take a little lunch break and then come back and start talking CIP, I don't think it's the end of the world. I wanted to commit to getting you all out by 2:00. Could we go beyond that? Absolutely. But we can certainly just end by 2:00. We could, after the break, if that's what you wanted to do, we could just talk CIP the rest of the time. And we'll have plenty of other forums to talk strategic plan and council priorities if you all were amenable to that. If not, we can just keep plugging away at these items. But, we do have Joanne here. Oh, I guess, are we meeting? We're supposed to meet in person here after the lunch break.
I didn't get that, John.
That's what we talked about,
Yeah.
is meeting in person at the, what Pam calls the picnic, after lunch. Is everybody still up for that?
Yeah, good. Yep.
Okay.
And
How many of us are willing or able to go past a little bit?
I can go past.
Okay.
do I need
Um,
access? I'm using like 3 screens right now to review all this. Can we do that in the park, or are we past that point?
Uh,
Review budget items.
Well, according to the agenda, most of it is improvements plan. So
You can make paper copies.
I figured I'd just be on my iPad, but
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was just making sure I had stuff downloaded.
Yep.
I gotta do that then.
Okay. Well, if everyone has a device or an iPad of some sort, then we'll convene. Oh yeah, Joanne, I can't remember. Are you able to join in person, or should we just call you on the phone?
No, I can join in person. It'll just take me about 35 minutes.
Okay. Well, that should be perfect since we're taking a little lunch break, right?
I think that's right. Should we break now and then meet down there at, 1 o'clock or a little before 1?
Works for me.
Okay.
Does that work for you guys?
I
Yeah.
think that works.
Yeah, meet at 1, you said?
Steph, 1:15 or 1?
1's fine to give everyone some more time.
And then, let's see, does anybody want Pam or Preston to print out either of the document number 06, the capital improvements plan, or 07, the 2020 strategic plan?
We should be able to access the town park Wi-Fi and look at it on our iPads, right?
I would think so.
So,
Just to be sure, I just tapped the download thing on the Dropbox app. So you should be able to do that right now before you walk away for lunch, and then they'll be on your iPad.
Could I get a one paper copy of those? I don't have Dropbox on my iPad, the one I'm using anyway. I need
yeah,
to
we can do that.
install.
Sorry.
I've got it on my computer, but not my iPad.
I'm gonna hop off with someone to view my videos, but I will see you guys at 1.
Okay, see everybody at 1.
See you.
All right, we'll see you at 1.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
Zoom.